Hello everybody. So this is me. Of course it's me. In a very rare, very raw, very like in my trackies, first day of bleed, workout from Pilates, singlet, no makeup. Don't really wear makeup anyway these days. Sty is nearly healed, but still there. Skin has been really rashy, kind of raw state. However, I have been inspired to tune in. There is something that I cannot ignore, which is my ability to read and how it has been like nagging and niggling at me to the point that I have been thinking of putting people in the drawer on my mailing list to go in the drawer for a free see, I keep saying reading. I want to say reading every single month, but I keep correcting myself and saying clearing, and it feels like it's a reading, which makes me feel like, cool, let's have a play with these tarot cards that I bought recently and that I've been fiercely learning about, obsessively learning about through watching like a million love life tarot, astrology, tarot readers, because I'm a manifesting generator. I do really well by learning from watching and then doing myself, and so I'm just freaking teaching myself how to do the thing. And I pulled some cards, and part of me laughs because I'm like, is this my own reading? However, my intention is that it's collective, so let me just riff and see what comes through, and you can tell me what you think as well in terms of your situation. So in this video situation is super informal. I'm just holding my phone. We'll see what happens, okay? Like, there's a perfection in this imperfection right now. Like, holy shit. Okay, so let's just start. Yeah, I'm getting like a really... So when I say I'm getting, it's laughable because it's like I'm part of the collective too, right? So this is sort of my journey, but I'm also like, my intention is to read for us, for all of us, not just, and when I say you, it's the collective. It's not me, even though I'm included. It's been a time, right? It's been a deep, dark, tumultuous time, and I feel like I want to say like way more than we expected. Way more than you expected. It's been, as we all know, like massive spiritual upgrades, expansion, stretching of our edges. There's a point to that. Like, we were supposed to journey that. We were supposed to be taken deep. But yeah, deeply, deeply spiritual. It's an ending of cycles. I feel like we've come full circle in many, if not in all areas of our lives, in some core areas, whether for you it's relationship, whether you've just completed another cycle where you've looped and done the same shit that you've done previously, whether it's the closing of other chapters like a job or personal internal patterns that you're healing, whether it's generational trauma or if you believe in past life stuff, or if it's just stuff that has been looping for a while and you're now able to see more clearly. And I feel like with these quote unquote spiritual tools, all this kind of inner work and these upgrades, be able to like actually finally address the thing that you might have been challenged by for a really long amount of time. I'm getting like aeons. Is that the word? A-E-O-N-S, like aeons, like a really, really long amount of time. There's a lot of like karmic closure too, which is interesting that I'm saying this because this is kind of new language for me. I haven't really brought in a lot of this to my readings in the past. I used to work for a psychic phone line and we weren't really allowed to read on certain topics, i.e. love life, and no, we were allowed to read on love life. That's pretty much all we were allowed to read on. We weren't allowed to read around health and something else because of liability. So yeah, it's interesting to kind of stretch my legs and say whatever is coming through, whatever I'm feeling. But it feels like some big karmic pieces are being closed or have been closed. the current and just recent astrology with a couple of eclipses, even though I'm no astrologer, I'm first to admit that, and also this retrograde that we're currently in, and other pieces that are happening, including full moons, etc., are really contributing to this closing of doors. And yes, there's free will, but I feel like for so many of us, there's hasn't been. It's like we haven't had a choice in the matters. Either stuff's ending because it's being forced upon us, or things are just kind of collapsing. But I feel like in this next cycle, we have a lot more choice than we might have felt we did, if that makes sense. I really also want to speak to this inner strength that has been cultivated from this last chapter. And I want to say, I feel like a lot of us don't actually realize, oh my God, I want to cry. Wow. I feel like a lot of us don't actually realize how strong we've either had to be or we are, and how much courage it has taken, and like inner resource that we've had to draw on to move through our individual circumstances. And I'm also like, I feel like I want to pause and take a minute to give each and every one of you who are watching this permission to acknowledge that whatever you've journeyed, and it might still be active and alive and happening. So just, want to be aware of that for you. But there's this tenderness I'm feeling, this like honor and tenderness and respect, whereby this is ironic that I'm crying. It's not ironic, it's something, it's weird, it's interesting that I'm crying, because there's been this running joke with my friends and I that like I'd love to get paid to cry for the collective, because I cry and feel so naturally. And I just heard like, oh, you're doing it. Yeah, because I've been having more experiences where when someone's not able to cry or feel, like I kind of emote. And I'm not saying I emote for them, but I just emote as myself, and I'm just curious. I'm like, what's that about? And also I'm okay with not knowing. So right now I'm just feeling, but with this piece of deep acknowledgement, I feel like it's been a time where it's been a integration of our masculine and our feminine parts and our energies, and whatever piece for us that is not naturally as strong, like we might be a male-bodied human still working on our masculine, our ability to commit and see things through and create results and be present, etc., whatever it is. Or it might be a female body working on that energy in us, or vice versa. So it's like whatever part of us has needed, I want to say sitting with as well. I'm getting this energy, or I'm knowing this energy too for myself, but for everybody, of this suspenseful time. Excuse me, my nose is a bit runny. This suspenseful time and this pause. It might have been like an excruciating suspense, one that's like, fuck, like when will we get there? When will this be over? I also know that like there's been a quickening of pace of events happening and occurring, yet the time that it's taking to get where we want to go might have felt quite slow, and like it's taking a long time, and or we're being asked and forced to wait. And I feel like with this rebalancing of this inner masculine and feminine, that's part of the medicine, is being able to be with those parts, or the parts that feel like an urgency and like I have to act impulsively, and then the other part that's like, no, just breathe, just be, just keep taking the small, aligned steps. Yeah. Is there anything else on that I want to feel? I feel like too, quite quickly, quite soon, if you haven't already, you will be able to understand the the weight or why it was needed. Like it's a very it's been very foundation building. And for those of you who haven't actually felt like you've taken a lot of action, like there's just been a lot of pausing and waiting, and gathering or rebuilding or rejuvenating or healing, rather than like getting shit done, if you will, or putting, bricks in place to build the path, you're actually doing that. You're building the path, energetically, spiritually. And that's what brings me to this next piece of success and prosperity. You want to keep using the word prosperity, whether that's financial. And I don't actually like to use the word abundance. It's a bit cringy and wanky to me, this like spiritual word abundance. It's not really spiritual, but gets used a lot in the spiritual community, and it kind of drives me insane. But whether that success or outcome for you is financial, and I like the word prosperity because it kind of encompasses, I don't know what I like about it, I just like it. Whether that's financial, or it feels relational too. It feels like it's got a very strong relational component, whether that's intimate relationships, loverships, partnership, or whether it is community and friendships. There feels like a huge element of that, what we've been wishing for and what we've been hoping for. We've been laying the bricks, like I said before, maybe internally, spiritually, emotionally, energetically, etc., for the outward success, which if you're not already seeing or receiving pieces of that in the 3D and the like actual, in your actual reality, or in your bank balance, or in your friendship circles around you, etc., it's like literally on its way very soon. And oh my God, I'm sounding like one of those readers. This is hilarious to me. I have to stop and laugh and be human about this, because I'm like, you sound like them. This is weird, Danny. So I'm just kind of in it and also speaking it and also hearing myself from your perspective and be like, oh golly. What else do I want to say about this? Yeah, I guess just that for so many of us too, there's been a lot of introspection, a lot of loneliness, a lot of having to withdraw. And when I say having to, it's not necessarily that we haven't had the support, whether that's materially or like relationally from people. It's that we've needed to find the gold ourselves and also find it internally. And I'm seeing though that now we're able to shine the torch on, like come out of our cave and shine the torch and go, oh look, there's fruit on the vine, there's fruit that's been growing outside the cave on the tree or whatever, and I didn't even know that. Like, cool, look at that, it's so beautiful. But we've been asked to be so like blinkers on, eye on the prize, whatever your unique prize is, whether that's just self-preservation at the moment or just previously, or for a while previously, or whether it's actually like a big project that you've just all-encompassing project that you're just what's the word, like completely absorbed in. Yeah, but I feel like too, the solo journey has been it's been important because you've needed to know what you're made of, and it's almost like I'm hearing the quicker that you do it alone, the quicker that you expand or something, which sounds counterintuitive to that quote about like, if you want to go slow, go alone, if you want to go fast, go together, or something like that. Because ultimately I think that the quote I just said, like do it together, it's faster, makes more sense. But in this instance, I know for a lot of us there's been this like what am I hearing and feeling? Okay, cool. It's like there's been a lot of codependency previously. Even if you're not in a relationship, I mean, we're all in relationships with life, but we're all in platonic relationships. Whether that's even with work colleagues, if you don't have family and around you closely, or partners. But it's like there's been a lot of codependency that we've all had to lean into and look at and address, even if we're not consciously aware of it, to move to this next stage that we're all stepping into or have stepped into. And with that too is a lot of releasing of karmic lessons and completing of loops and patterns and closing of doors and releasing things that were teaching us before and that we might have been holding on to keep us safe, but we no longer need for this next stage. And it might have been comfortable and familiar, and so the waiting and the being with self and the almost hermiting, etc., and the release of some of these karmic, whether it's relationships or patterns, reliances, codependencies, has been uncomfortable, but it's important. And I feel like we've been squeezed out, or we are being squeezed out of the other side now. Which brings me to the next piece, which is that there's this, I feel like this triumphant feminine in all of us, and you might not actually identify with that. You might not even know what the heck I'm talking about. You might be like, what does her language even mean? The feminine part of us is the part that's connected to our emotional selves, that's intuitive, that's knowing, that's connected to our hearts. And I feel like when I say in a triumphant, that part of us being triumphant, it's like whether we're aware that that part has been in stronger operation or not, that we've been working in sync or in collaboration with that part of us. Either we've been forced to do it, so we've been doing it unawares, or we are consciously choosing to do it. I'm just going to lift my arm. Told you this video will be a little bit rat shit, to be crass with my language. But yeah, I feel like I want to acknowledge all of our inner woman. Again, it's an energy, it can be for a male or female bodied human. But there's a lot of what's to come, or what is being birthed, or what's happening in terms of success in whatever way that is for each of us, is related to us tuning into our feelings, tuning into our hearts, tuning into that inner knowing as well, that fire in our belly, that passion, that life force energy, that creative energy, and really collaborating with her, I'm going to say, to take action, to take aligned action. The old paradigm or the old way of operating is kind of override that and just do it anyway. Or just stop and listen to your feelings and don't take any action, just be at victim, or be at victim to your feelings, because you can't possibly operate from that really overwhelmed emotional space. But I know that I want to say that this whole piece or whole journey or whole chapter for us has been about the merging of the two parts of us, and well done. I really want to say well done, because if you haven't considered how maybe challenging that could have been for you, it might be that people that for you naturally your feminine energy might be your strong energy or your most familiar, but there's still shadow, or there's still parts of that part of you that isn't developed. It's underdeveloped, it's young, it's immature, and has needed to up level, or you've need to bring her on board into your life, and your love and your creations and your existence, and express that part of you in a different way. I also feel to say, if this is new for you, and if this doesn't make sense, and if this is unfamiliar, it might be an area that you need to start to explore. Because for some people it actually still is immature and still is young as part of ourselves, and can add a lot of richness and a lot of grace, and a lot of depth and fulfillment and intimacy, so much intimacy into our lives. And if you haven't explored this part of yourself, you wouldn't know that yet. And it's an invitation, and me just just you hearing this is an invitation to explore that for yourself. Yes, that's what I'm going to say on that topic. But yeah, this triumphant feminine, and for those of you who haven't stopped to really acknowledge this part of you that you've grown and matured, or like brought into your life in a completely different way lately, and it might be small little tweaks that you've made with her. I just really want to acknowledge her and you and all of us. We have a partnership, and that might be, what do I want to say about this? I feel like I wanted to say we have a partnership on the horizon. We have a partnership on the horizon. That might be kind of what I've already been speaking to for you, like a expression of your inner man and inner woman coming together out into the world. So you emerging as a new version of you, with both of these parts on board and activated in a different way. It might actually be a human partnership. It might be a rebirth of a partnership that already exists, like a new chapter of it. I'm feeling this very strong, and also seeing this very strong new chapter energy vibes. And with that, to receive that, or to get to that, we've had to close the last chapter. For so many of us, the closing of that chapter has been pretty damn painful, potentially related to that pausing and that waiting and that suspension and that time that we've had to that kind of a holding pattern time. But it's also been like a purge and a necessary release and a necessary cleanse, and the end, or the death, or the closing of the last chapter is actually it's not a bad thing at all. Although many of us might have felt like, and we still could be on the tail end of feeling like it is, and it's hard and it's difficult, and it still might not have fully ended for you. There still might also be fragments that you are unwilling to release, attachments, or things that need to be let go of. And if that is something you haven't done, but your soul knows that it needs to happen, then I encourage you to lean into that edge or that discomfort, because on the other side is something so much better in whatever way that is for you uniquely. And again, I'm getting shown this, whether it's happened for you or whether it's in its process of being shown to you or whether it's just to come, this energy of alchemical energy, that's what I was trying to say. And this, do you know what I want to say? Like this ability to balance ourselves, or make magic within ourselves, or listen to ourselves and hear the calling, or hear the inner voice and move towards it. Or like I'm seeing this, do you know what? It's like we have greater power. We have power beyond our measure. Does that make sense? Greater power than we even realize. And it's like if there's a candle, and we take a cup of water and we put it on the candle flame, it'll put the candle out, right? And it's such a simple thing. It's like it dissolves, or it puts the flame out. It's like we have quite easy and quite simple ways of being able to alchemize some of our own challenges. And whether that is, and a good example is like just sitting with our feelings and with discomfort and being with it, and not distracting, numbing, running away from, avoiding. That in of itself is, and that's a codependency pattern. So I just want to mention that codependency that I talked about before is not just about relational patterns between two people or multiple people. It's about dependencies between ourself and other, and it could be an other thing, like between myself and social media, or between myself and substances, or whatever it is. It's not just people related, although for some of us it is people related. Our weaknesses or our dynamics of avoidance or of numbing or of distraction or whatever, or our crutch might be to do with people. But what I'm seeing and what I'm hearing is this next chapter is a lot of sovereignty, and that this is where the release of karmic lessons and relationships and dynamics from this old and previous chapter, or still to be, finalized, is important, because this next era, if you will, is very much about sovereign beings, people standing in their own power and their own individuality and their own self-sustenance and sufficiency, but in partnership, and so interdependence of relating, whether that's in community and in platonic friendships or in intimate partnerships. But there's this real highlighting of our individual magic and our individual ability to transform ourselves first, and then also those around us in the world. And there's very much an angelic role to play. Like there's an angelic influence, that's the word I'm looking for, in all of this. So much beauty and awesomeness. And I feel like with the start of this year as well, what are we, like May? It's been 5 months-ish. It's been, someone asked me the other day, like my dad actually in New Zealand, he's like, how are you? And I was like, what do I even say? And I just said to him something like, this year has been quite unexpectedly different to what I thought it would be. And there's been a lot of challenge personally. And there's been a lot of beauty. And I think for many of us, or I know, and I'm just tuning into what I'm already talking about and reading about, is there's been a lot more unexpected challenge and difficulty than we might have been expecting. I'm repeating myself. So for me to sit here and go, there's so much like epicness to come, it can feel or sound a little bit contrived, or a little bit light and love, like, it's going to be great. But I honestly see or feel that there's this light at the end of the tunnel, if you will, that will only be possible. It's, what am I hearing? It's like a grounded light, which sounds weird, but okay, what it is how I just said, it sounds super contrived and light and love, to be like, it's just going to be amazing. What this is speaking to is this concept of like spiritual bypassing, of glossing over the bad stuff, the ugly stuff, the gross stuff to the good. It's like when we're like, what does my dad say to me? As long as you're happy. And I'm just like, wank, wank. And I'm a big proponent of not bypassing basically the humanness of life. So when I say there's going to be like it's almost like a grounded light at the end of the tunnel, it's like this beauty and this joy and this what the word that's quite applicable is sweetness. Like, once you've overcome a really big challenge, like the bliss of the light at the end of the tunnel is so much sweeter. It's like a cold beer at the end of like a really hot day's physical work in the sun. That kind of, I guess, analogy, even if you don't drink beer or you're not a hard worker physically or whatever, but that like I can almost feel that deliciousness in my system of like, that sounds amazing. It's like that. It's like when you've worked for it, it's that much sweeter. And when we've done this shadow work or this inner what's the word I'm looking for? Like in a excavation, there is, a sweeter light at the end of the tunnel, and a grounded one, because we haven't bypassed. We've actually done the hard yards, and we're like, you know what? I'm humbled by myself. And I feel like that's what's emerging for the collective. And this can be extended beyond like the last sort of 4 months or so, to like the whole pandemic as an example. It's humbled us in a lot of different ways, because we've all been brought to our knees in our own unique journeys, and we've had our own personal challenges, which have really shown us, one, what we've made of, one, what's important, two, what's important, and really, really humbled us. So it's that much more beautiful, this space that we're able to access life from, whether you're there yet or whether you're about to taste it soon. I kind of want to let you know. And this partnership piece, I want to just return back to, and this collaboration piece, I think, or I know that there's a lot of this collective thread actually at the moment that we don't want to do it alone. There's been a lot of dissolving of this lone wolf energy. And this actually brings me back to the pandemic as an example. Because we've been forced to be isolated, we've really been, one, forced to face ourselves, which has been hard but necessary. But two, we've really come to the general consensus or understanding or knowing that it's so much better in relationship, or it's so much better in partnership, or connection is our freaking lifeblood. And we've seen through this pandemic, unfortunately, with the mass amounts of suicide, more than normal, what separation and disconnection does to us. That's a whole nother topic that I can go into separately, but there's this coming together of collaboration and teamwork and desire to not do it alone, and whether that's in intimate relationship and coming together there, or whether that's in teams and communities, this sort of community uprising, if you will. And there's this renewed and refreshed, and I want to say sustainable, and this is related to the karmic relationships and pieces that have had to drop away, or that are still in its in stages of dropping away. There's this I guess elevated space that we're coming together from, a healthy again, wanky word, more conscious, more self-aware, more in tune with ourselves, and so therefore more aware, coming together to build from, and meeting point, whether that's a new relationship, like I said, or in collective relationships. And lastly, what I want to say on that is that are built on a depth of emotion, and that are enriched by a depth of emotion, because we've had this, or we are having this chance to really address our own emotional bodies, go deeper with our own emotional selves, understand that part of us, whether that's our heart or our emotional landscape in general. And for you that maybe hasn't really explored this part of you yet, you might just be on the tiny tip of the iceberg, and that's okay. But like I said earlier, there's this opportunity for us to bring more of our depth of emotion, more of our heart, more of our soul, into what we're building, what we're creating, and that bringing about much deeper intimacy and fulfillment. There's this really strong emotional component, and I'm just hearing again, it's so funny. I'm cringing multiple times in this reading, and also laughing and going, oh my God, you're saying the things and you're doing the things, Danny. What I heard is New Earth. I also heard New World Order. What even is that? I don't even understand. But yeah, this next stage, next chapter, I'm going to say it, New Earth. It's for example, my parents' generation, that emotions were separate to our, business relationships. Emotions were suppressed even in partnership and marriage. You just shut them in and keep going. But the enrichment of our lives is because of the emotional component, and it's necessary. And I'm hearing also some personal pieces for myself to bring in, so that's beautiful. But yeah, I think that that's coming to an end, or has come to an end, and I hope this has been useful for you or beautiful for you in some ways. I would love to hear what resonates for you, what spoke to you, what you might needed to receive. And yeah, thank you for joining and for witnessing and for receiving. I really appreciate you, and also seeing me in my realness and vulnerability. And yeah, that's all. So much love.